playing cards you could get. And so we found a printer that's like, Alexander was saying, this printer is the best printer for anything and everything. And so we just said, we want the best. And so it's like, okay, so it turns out he farmed it out to a place that he thinks is the best printer. And so we're waiting for the cards to come back and from the printer. And then I get this phone call, and he says, "Hi, I'm the guy where you farmed them out, and we think these cards are really beautiful. So we want to put an extra card in to advertise our printing company." And I said, "All right, tell you what, I'd be cool with that for $20,000. And I say $20,000 because I really don't want an ad in these cards because we sold them at a premium price. And so, and they said, well, that price is unreasonable. And it's like, I know, that's the idea. is to basically not necessarily say no, but like, if you're going to pay me $20,000, I'll allow it. I'll be totally cool with it. So, so really, no. And so that was the end of it. And it's like, I paid my fucking money, send me my fucking cards. Now, I don't know how much they're printing them for, because clearly whoever subbed it out he's like, he's going to make some money. The guy subbing it out, he's going to clear some coin. Mm-hmm. So we get the cards and we send them out. And like a month later, we find out that we've got competition. They're using the exact same design of the cards. So it turns out that the printer that got subbed out, that they went ahead and printed them up themselves, only sticking in a card advertising their company. And they were competing with me. And they were selling the cards, just printing them and selling them, having a great time. And then somebody on my Amazon thing said, hey, can I get these in quantity? And those fuckers replied and said that they would sell them in quantity. Here's our phone number. Just go ahead and call us, and we'll get you quantity orders. And it's like, holy shit. So then when we ran out of cards, it's kind of like, okay, if we're going to do it at all, we got to go to a totally different printer. And then there was even the question of like, does it fucking matter? I mean, the printer can obviously print them probably for 1/10 of the price of whatever we're paying to anybody for a printer. And so they can always outcompete us. And I just sell them direct, or I sell them on Amazon. And Amazon just takes a fat cut. And so it's kind of like any money that I make off the cards basically has to be set aside for the next printing. And so I kind of end up not making any money on these cards. In the meantime, I see other people like printing out decks of cards, and it's like, how can they sell them that fucking cheap on Amazon? And so I don't know. I'm baffled. But all right, there's the big story.
Yeah, yours are going for $10. Or not even $9. It's cheap.
$9 on Amazon. But if you get 2 bricks, which is 2 dozen cards directly from me, it ends up being $4 a deck.
Oh wow!
Yeah. And then the idea is that you can give them to your family, give them to your friends, your coworkers, whatever. Yeah, infect brains with permaculture. And so. This year I did the 3rd printing. And so then that means that we've already shipped out 20,000 decks of cards. And what will happen is that we'll sell thousands like in the weeks just before Christmas. And then we won't even sell 1,000 the rest of the year. Like we'll sell 2 decks per week the rest of the year. Just wait until Christmas rolls around again, I guess. Yeah. So, but we've worked really hard. We've got the digital market running good. We're doing some tests. We're going to make some changes today to the digital market to simplify it a little bit more. But and then we'll announce announce the hell out of it on the daily-ish email, like in 2 days, because that's when a lot of people are going to be like, oh no, I gotta, get gifts, but I didn't go buy anything for anybody. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, we've got a lot of stuff that including stuff that's not even my stuff. A lot of other people in the digital market.
If I order the bricks from you, how quickly do they arrive?
We send them out generally the same day via priority mail. So
you'll get them
which is like 3 days.
Yeah.
So people can get them right now. Just go to richsoil.com/cards, and then you'll be able to see that you can get them a brick, 2 bricks. We even have a thing for half a brick, but it's $100 for 2 bricks.
Cool.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the stocking stuffer element, I think, is a big part of it. But I think another thing is that I think a lot of the people that buy it by the brick, they're as interested in infecting brains as I am. Like, and I also kind of feel like a lot of my I've had several people that just support everything that I do, and they buy them by the case, and they just give them away willy-nilly. I mean, it's kind of like if you know somebody you want to help out, you want to give them money, but you don't want to just give them money. And so it's like, well, I'll just go ahead and buy a few cases.
Well, I think they're great stocking stuffers, and generally with cards, like after a year, they end up somewhere else in someone else's hand somehow, and so you get another stack, or you already have a stack, and they're good things to regift. They're good regifts if you wanted to give to someone already had them. Hey, I just made you host because I'm on this Chromebook, which I hate. And I can't broadcast to Facebook with the Chromebook thing, so I'm hoping you can. If you see a share button in the menu bar.
I see share screen, but I know that's not it, right?
No. I don't know what else would be on. I can't remember. Let me look it up. It's one of those menu bars. Click more, and you'll see something about Facebook.
Do what?
You see a button that says more?
More. I do.
What's under there?
Invite or stop recording.
Oh, so apparently it doesn't work. So on Apple, on Mac, and on Windows, you can broadcast to Facebook, but we'll broadcast it later to Facebook. Sorry, Facebookers, you are not getting the shit early. You're getting it late. But that's okay. We got our loyal customers that are in the meeting. So thanks, guys, for joining again. Glad to see you all here. I thought it'd be a little slim because of the holidays, everybody traveling around. But apparently we are more important than family.
Damn right.
Kidding. But we are more entertaining.
When I go to my family events, there's been some events have been better than others, but a lot of times it's kind of like, it's almost traditional that Thanksgiving, people are going to have to, it's going to have to be awkward as hell, somebody's got to set you all straight on all the politics, and then they got to set you all straight on whatever. And I kind of feel like, for me, it's always that thing about how somebody says, you want to talk about the environment? It's like, I don't want to hear about the environment. I already bought the fucking light bulbs. and it's kind of like that seems to be the conversation every fucking time, and it's like, and you're kind of thinking like, okay, what I've done now is, and in fact, we've got somebody on the staff who's having some problems with some in-laws, and I was trying to console that person by saying basically, I just be myself, and it drives off all of my blood relatives and non-blood relatives, and I'm just horribly offensive to all of those people. And I kind of feel like, I feel like being offensive is not necessarily a bad thing, because then what happens is that then you draw in the people that think you're cool, and then you just, those are your peeps. You hang out with those people. Don't hang out with the people that think you're awful.
I did a big culling of family members, friends, and Facebook friends 1 year. It was a couple of years ago, and I eliminated. So I went from like 25 something thousand followers on Facebook down to like 2. Like I just eliminate it all. And then I did the same thing with friends, or friends, like people that I'm like, these people are my friends. Why do I keep calling these? Like when I'm talking about them with someone else, I'm saying friend. They're not friends. And so I like eliminated. So now I'm down to like 5 core friends. So I went through that whole process. That was a lot of fun. Hey everybody, welcome to Permaculture Smackdown. Another episode. Today we're going to talk about Nazis.
That's right.
Kind of.
Bigotry. Bigotry. Not just racism, but speciesism.
Yes. So Paul sends me an email. What the hell are we going to talk about today? And I'm like, let's talk about like winterizing plants. And I'm like, I don't know. That's not not winterizing plants. Just things to do in permaculture during the winter. And which should be much more and that is because we're already in winter. Like pretty much, you know what you're going to be doing for the winter for your plants. And he sent me this article he wrote 3 years ago. It's the dark side of native plant enthusiasm. And so I wanted to go over this article with you. How does that sound, Paul?
That sounds like it was my idea. So now, I mean, I think when you first presented to me the idea of doing Permaculture Smackdown, I thought of this article. And it's kind of like, I mean, in fact, I just kind of want to, okay, so one quick note. Hey, to all those people that are participating in our little chat that we can see right here, do I sound okay? And does Josiah sound okay? Because for me, Josiah just talked and it sounded like shit. And so I'm wondering if it's my internet or Josiah's. Josiah sounds like shit. Paul sounds good. Josiah goes burbly off and on. Okay, so it's not just me. All right. Mm-hmm. So I got to also say that we just put out a podcast. We got a 4-part podcast. Joss and I spent 6 hours recording it. Have any of you guys that are typing in here? Have any of you listened to any of that yet? It just went out, and basically the idea is a lot of what we just talked about, where we were just talking about, like, you're pissing off your relatives, and it's kind of like, and basically how is it that you pissed off those relatives? And I'll bet you nearly universally, each relative that you've pissed off have said unto you, and I'm saying to Josiah or anybody watching this, have said, do as I say or else. And what they do is they're saying they're going to make some kind of outlandish political or religious statement. And it's not that you're allowed to have an opinion, you're allowed to have their opinion. Yeah. And in fact, not only are you allowed to have their opinion, you're required to. And if you won't regurgitate back confirmation of what they just said, now you're an asshole. You're in big fucking trouble. And so really that's at the core of so much of this stuff. All right. So now, when you originally proposed to me this series, Permaculture Smackdown, which I think we've been doing a year now. Has it been a year? Yeah,
I think it has. I mean, we're into the 30s on episodes. So yeah.
This is season 2, maybe. But when you first proposed it to me, I basically thought, okay, we're going to talk about those fucking light bulbs, because it's like, to me, my position on the light bulbs seems not only rock solid, but fucking obvious. And anybody who disagrees with it, and I know I'm playing into that role of just what I complained about a moment ago, but it's all relative and subjective. Anybody who disagrees with my position is a fucking idiot. And I really believe that strongly in my position. And I want to say that they're fucking idiots, so that way the fucking idiots will go away and leave me alone. Now, granted, at times I compose something to feed to the general public to be more persuasive. But really, if anybody has a philosophy different than mine about the light bulbs, I really don't want to share a table with them. So when you're talking about going and seeing family, it's like, what, a bunch of people that are still advocating CFLs or LED lights? No, I don't want to sit at a table with those people. They just believe whatever bullshit they're fed. And frankly, I'd rather sit at a table with a bunch of people that can understand the concept of radiant heat and the value of an incandescent light bulb in a cold climate when you're on the grid. And it's like, because then you get together with those people and you can really talk about real substantive stuff and make a difference. So on the one hand, I don't mind broadcasting my message to a bunch of dumb fucks who maybe I'll convince 3% of them to change. But on the other hand, it's like, if I want to sit down and visit with somebody, I'm sorry, I'm really tired. I remember being at meals and being told that if you don't do conventional ag, 3/4 of the world's population would starve to death. And it's such bullshit. That's a fucking lie. And it's like, I don't want to spend my time sharing a table with those dumb fucks. I'd rather share, if I'm going to be sitting at a table with people, I want to sit at a table with people that are like, they're going to say, Masanobu Fukuoka proved that one wrong a long time ago. And now let's talk about all the things above and beyond that. Let's talk about Holzer's work, Fukuoka's work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as opposed to, starting off with this, piece of bullshit stated as absolute fact. So this article, I believe, falls into the same category because people at eco level 1 or 2 are just bonkers about native plants, which is great. But really that being bonkers about native plants is a thin veneer over this plant bigotry, this Nazism, which is really a facade for spraying herbicides. And it's like, so now whenever I hear somebody advocating native plants, I just immediately think that they're an herbicide company shill. And so, and this is the thing I presented for today, because I believe it fits so extremely well with the whole concept of Permaculture Smackdown.
While I was, so my goal, of course, when reading the article, I'm like, okay, we're going to talk about this. I want to read the article, watch all the videos, make sure I got it down. And my first goal when reading any article is I try to do the devil's advocate, play devil's advocate. And like, how is this, or how could others think of this in a negative light, or how do I think of it in a negative light? And that was really hard to do with your article. What I found myself doing when reading the article was thinking about how it relates to immigration of human beings into different cultures. So, at any rate, let's jump into the article. So, do you want to read it like paragraph by paragraph, or how do you want to do this, Paul?
I do. I want to read each paragraph and then give you a chance to add to it or rebut or whatever. And hopefully the people that are in our chat we'll have it. We'll also jump in and say something. I'm sure you'll be reading their stuff as I'm reading this off. But does somebody have a link to this article handy? There's the link, sort of. I don't think they can copy and paste it, but
I'll put it in.
Okay, in the chat stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and read it because everybody can hear me fine and you sound like shit. Okay. Over the last few decades, I have met a lot of very lovely people that are freaky enthusiastic about native plants. And as much as they seem to powerfully advocate a positive thing, I must confess that I've now been down this road so many times that when I encounter somebody advocating native plants, my stomach twists into a knot. I will often choose to change the subject in an effort to keep the conversation friendly. When I first heard of arguments about native plants, I could not comprehend how there could possibly be anything to argue over. What's wrong with native plants? And it turns out that the problem has nothing to do with advocating for native plants, but in advocating against all other plants, not just for oneself, but for all people. I think that the argument for native plants, or more accurately against non-native plants, is that there used to be all these different spots with interesting stuff growing. And with international travel and trade, seeds have been introduced from all over the world, such that all places everywhere are losing their botanic distinctiveness. And so all places everywhere, and I put a little asterisk there, are becoming more homogeneous. The same things are growing everywhere. The corollary to that is that a lot of species that used to do well here are being crowded out by species that do even better here. All right, so with the asterisk, when I say everywhere, I mean to say of similar spots are ending up with the same things globally, and I would expand for a few dozen pages on proving the accuracy of the statement, but I'm going to leave that for some other day. All right, so
we'll leave it for today.
I think it's a good point. It's like there was stuff that grew like weeds here that doesn't grow like weeds here anymore because other stuff is growing like weeds here. So a good example here is knapweed. Knapweed is, there's a lot of different spots where knapweed is just taken over. And it's difficult to get anything else to grow because the knapweed, it's allelopathic. It's poisoning the other plants. It's killing all the other plants. And there's other examples too. But, the thing is that, knapweed has really acclimated well to Montana. It's doing just really great. So, and I think that that's a good point. They want people, the native plant enthusiasts would love to see these fields infested with the stuff that it was infested with 200 years ago instead of the stuff that white people brought in. All right. Ready for me to go on the next section, or do you want to say something?
Well, there's a lot in this part right here, and I kind of want to dive into it a little more. And then I don't know if I should read that. Did you see what Ben wrote in chat?
But black plants are screwed. All plants matter. Okay, but black plants are screwed.
Yeah, and so when we start talking about this, it was interesting to bring up the social aspect of immigration, kind of trying to think of that as like a guild being the social structure of an environment, and these immigrants coming in, what do they add and what do they bring negative to the society? And the same with people's society, with we'll say America as an example, with immigrants coming in from other countries. There are things that are added values, and there are things that are negative that are brought in, depending on all kinds of circumstances, depending on the plant, depending on the weather, depending on the specific climate. There's all kinds of things that affect whether this is a positive or negative on the environment. And I think the same is true with plants, with different plants that come into an ecosystem. Now, a big thing when discussing native versus non-native plants is that we also need to think about beyond our lives, because the effects that these plants have on the environment, and any plants, it doesn't matter whether it's native or non-native, are expanding beyond what human life cycle is. So we are concentrated, and we might think negatively about a non-native plant because of the effects it has on our specific environment that we are trying to control or trying to make better. But those effects could be a lot longer than our lifetimes. A great example is in the video where he's talking about the grapes, or maybe it was you talking about grapes, overcoming trees, and grapes being a native plant, overcoming trees, bringing them down. And that's a cycle that goes beyond our age. Like, we won't see that in our lifetimes. It's something that we want those grapes ultimately to bring down trees, because then it's going to degrade the trees, and they're going to compost into the soils, create more soils. But it's going to happen a lot longer than our lives will exist.
Okay, now I think you're making some good points, and I think those are going to be good to address after some of the points from this article. And I got to say that, this article of mine had been brewing for many, many years, and I was heavily influenced by the people that appear in videos here, like Toby, and then there's Rick Valley and Ernie.
Peter's in there.
Yeah. There's a lot of different people that are here, and it's like, and basically, all right. So I'm gonna because I think there's some important points, and plus the people that are typing here are making the exact points that are in the articles. I want to cover through this. So let's start off with native to when. It is my impression that here in Montana, a plant is considered native if it was growing here before white people showed up. Although there were some white people popping in around 1743, it seems we draw the line at 1804, when Lewis and Clark came through. Native Americans moved a lot of seeds around before white folks got here with their seeds, but I'm willing to let this go when selecting the official native plant date. I suppose the passion for native plants could be a sort of guilt thing. White people brought a bunch of seed here, and those plants are overwhelming the plants that were already here, such as the cool plants that were here before could go extinct without a bit of intervention. So, a lot of folks want to repair the problems caused by their ancestors.
You know what that reminds me of right there is like the white people bringing in a bunch of black people to America. Like you're doing it like that way. It's a horrible thing to think.
All right, I want to turn to the chat people. Am I still sounding clear and Josiah still sounding like shit? Let's see, because I couldn't even make out what you just said. It was so bad.
Forget it.
Yes, Josiah is garbled. I'm awesome. Okay.
I'm going to get on my phone. I think my phone would be better.
Oh, then you'll probably have all kinds of echoey stuff going on or something. But, okay, it says, Arturo says, Josiah must remain silent.
I will fix it.
Okay. So a date is selected. Everything before that date is native. And things that showed up after that date are non-native, crisp, and clear. Of course, there were plants that showed up before 1743 that were invasive and a nuisance. A great example is the Douglas fir tree, which I think Julia was saying something about that a moment ago. It's great for building stuff we like to build. The folks that were living here before 1743 didn't care for it. They would burn it out. It kept trying to take over land that was currently growing food. Oh, sure, they found uses for it, but they also worked to get rid of it in spaces where it was a bother. There's a bit of comedy when non-native people advocate killing the non-natives. So maybe there have been some people that think that the date for native should have been for the Douglas fir for when the Douglas fir tree showed up. So all right, so the thing is that the Douglas fir tree is considered now to be a climax species, and it's allelopathic. Okay, now there's 2 Josiah Wallingfords, and I'm hearing myself with a 1 second delay.
It's better, isn't it?
So if you're gonna mute, there you go, mute. That's the button. All right. So maybe there have been some people that think that the date for native should have been before the Douglas fir tree showed up. Here's one of my all-time least popular videos, and so then let's skip that for now. The next big point is natural succession. At one point in time, there were no Douglas fir trees. And then they showed up and sort of wiped out lots of other species or cool stuff. And now they're labeled native, no white people involved. There are similar stories for nearly all plants. Species come and species go, survival of the fittest. Granted, human beings with their fancy boats and explorer boots come along, and this whole process was dramatically accelerated. But for the moment, I want to do a bit of a mental exercise. I want to embrace the spirit of the native plants movement and look at what plants are here in 2014. So I wrote this in 2014 that would have made it here even if the whole white people acceleration thing didn't happen. After all, this whole succession thing is happening all the time. Birds and other critters help a lot. And it would seem that Native American people do some too. And of course, wind. While we are putting a lot of effort in hating and killing plants just because they were not here by the 1804 deadline, it seems like the decent thing to do is to add plants to that list that would have made it here by now without all this white people influence. Maybe half the plants that are currently being sprayed because they are non-native would get a note from science saying, please don't kill dandelion anymore. We decided that they would have made it here by now due to wind and birds. So we added it to the native list. Thanks! So, now, I'm not sure exactly what to call that other than natural succession. So there may have been a list of like, they're now on the native list now. You know, I'm not, like we've decided to add them even though they showed up after 1804. We think that they would have made it here naturally by now. So therefore, now it gets a native sticker. I don't know. We've blessed it. The native blessing.
I hate the blame white people stigma. I think white people did bring in some bad plants, but white people also brought in a lot of great plants, as did other people.
Oh, absolutely. And I think we're going to get in. I mean, that's the next section here. Yeah. So the whole diet of native plants thing. And it's like, I think that the goal here is that whole thing of like, there was a fairly unique biodiversity thing happening here, and it's kind of being obliterated by all of the stuff that we've brought in the last 200 years. And it's like, legit. I think that's legit. And it's kind of like, golly gee willikers, I wish we had that diversity that we had before. And it's like, it's okay to want that. I mean, it's at this point in time, it's a crazy want, and we're going to get into that in a moment too. But the bottom line is, how do you spell it out? How do you specify it? And it's going to be European folks, you know, really, is what it was. It's like they accelerated this process, and we ended up with this more homogenous kind of a system. But and frankly, I think in the role of permaculture, what I feel like is a permaculturalist romances nature. And I think nature without a gardener is lonely. And our function is to enter into this relationship. But, okay, setting that aside, we'll move on with my article. A diet of native plants. I have met some people that are so passionate about native plants that they insist that anything that is non-native should be removed. When I try to ask what percentage of their diet is from native plants, well, it takes a while to get a clear answer. But so far, the answer appears to be nearly universally less than 1%. I would like to suggest that people living in town with a quarter of an acre plant a permaculture food system. Native plant people tend to take that same piece of land and plant 100% native species, which is fine. The problem I have is when they get angry at other folks for not doing the same. I like to think that if people nurture a permaculture food system on their quarter of an acre, they might someday be able to grow half the food they eat. I think that this might save 2 acres of farmland that would otherwise need to grow stuff to feed them. That 2 acres could be left as wildland, which hopefully will include a lot of native plants. And then there's the video of Toby basically saying that.
And I'd play that video, but I might, someone owns Toby now. So, all right, I won't go into that.
Oh, yeah. I think...
Let's play it. I don't care.
Should I play it instead?
No, it won't matter. It's going out on our stuff. Let's see how... You might have to play it. I'm not sure. Yeah, you go ahead and play it.
All right. So let's see. It's not a very long video. It's 6 minutes long.
Yeah.
So I have to share the screen.
Yeah, go to share screen and make sure you check at the bottom, for audio or whatever. Make sure it's good for the audio.
All right. So I'm going to the bottom. And I click on share screen. And then I have to do something with audio.
Oh, you're good. Just hit play. Let's see how it sounds.
First, I want to say...
Is it working? Can you hear it?
It's quiet. Oh, so stop sharing.
All right.
Now, when you click on share screen, on the bottom, do you see share audio from computer?
Okay, I clicked on share screen, and I don't see, all I see is I selected what I'm sharing, and I got the button that says share screen.
Okay, there's no check boxes. All right, we'll go with that.
So I was playing it, and it was very loud to me, but it wasn't, you couldn't hear it?
Yeah, try playing it again. Let's see what happens.
First, I want to say about native plants, I love...
That was super loud to me, but I've got headphones on. Yay.
Super quiet to us. All right, so we'll just, can you summarize what he was talking about?
Let's just skip it. I mean, I'm covering it. I'm talking about it.
All right.
I've got a couple of, okay, these are pretty quick. So the powwow grounds in Elmo, Montana. I was invited to the powwow grounds in Elmo, Montana to give permaculture advice. While giving my advice, they told me that they had recently received advice from a native plants person. The suggestion was, of course, all native plants. I think their property was like 10 acres, something like that. I told them that would certainly be interesting. I mean, I do think it would be cool to go to a property like that, and it's like everything you see is what was here 200 years ago, 300 years ago. I told them that the cost for all native plants would be about $1.1 million to set it up and $200,000 per year to maintain. And actually, they did not like that price tag.
I think you would have to create a biodome.
Well, I think what it is that in for $1.1 million, you're going to have to pretty much destroy all life. You're going to have to scorch the earth. And then you're going to have to plant your natives and get them going and simultaneously go through like twice a week and pluck out all of the non-natives that try to get started there. I mean, it's going to be a huge job, enormous task. And that's why $1.1 million to get it started. And then each year you're going to have to continually spend twice a week plucking out anything that tries to show up. I mean, it's going to be an enormous task. All right, so then,
not to mention insects. I mean, all the animals and insects. They're non-native insects and animals here, birds and things.
I'm just talking about plants. I'm just talking about dealing with just the plants.
Right.
I then proposed that they do permaculture on most of the property and have a small area that would be established and maintained as common plants growing in this area in 1804. I went on to point out that when Mullen came to the area, the Native Americans found 17 different uses for this plant. I would think that for all the plants that arrived through the centuries, Native Americans found uses and found a way to live with the changes. It would seem that Native Americans embrace all of nature and do not exercise a bigotry based on some arbitrary date. My philosophy appeared to be well embraced. I don't know what the hell they did. I mean, I never went back to the site. And then here's my Mullen video, which...
That's a great video, by the way, guys. Mullen's one of my favorite plants. And I didn't even know it wasn't native. I thought it was, I didn't know if it was native or not, but that was interesting to learn. But it's a great plant. As far as the Native Americans go, I think I think natives that practice farming, agriculture, I think did things where they would scorch earth, like and
Oh yeah,
plant. Yeah, but
that's what they would do. The pine trees.
yeah,
The pine trees wanted to come in and obliterate all of the meadows where they're growing all kinds of food.
yeah.
And so what they would do is they would burn back the pines. They'd burn them. They would start forest fires. You know,
And that's not just subject to North American natives. That's subject to like every native around the world did that kind of practice.
the pine is effectively a weed. Okay, I haven't been reading all of the comments on the chat. Have you been keeping up with those?
Yeah, it was. So Ben says Douglas fir is key for salmon and fungi, but no monoculture is good, even Douglas fir. It's similar to John Rawls' theory of justice, where the imperative is to help the least fortunate while hurting nobody else.
All right. Now, of course, and this is something I say, a lot of people say, they bring up noxious weeds. Then I almost always universally do this. I say, okay, you tell me, what does noxious mean? And
Annoying.
It seems like most people believe it's like, oh, they're poison. That's what it means. Noxious means poison.
I think most people that I hear from, they are like, it's overcoming. It just overcomes other plants and makes it so they can't grow.
So there used to have the meaning noxious weeds. Noxious. There used to be a noxious weed list, and what it meant is that if your animals ate only that it would be toxic to them. So in a way, it does mean poison. But over the years, it has evolved, and now what it means is the government has decided they don't like it, and most of that has to do with how these plants on this list interfere with monocrops. So somebody somewhere is trying to grow a monocrop, and these fucking weeds come in and fuck up their monocrop plants. That's what it means now.
Or you have a company that specializes in monocropping, might start with a mono, and so you're gonna lobby. You're gonna say, "Hey, government, fuck this plant."
I mean, the general mentality is that if, like, let's say you've got 1,000 acres that you farm, and then if you can get all of your neighbors for a 5-mile radius to not have this plant anymore, then this plant won't be a problem anymore. And I mean, like, they're pissed off at plants that are natives also. But what they find is that, okay, all right, I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me just read this here real quick. But the word noxious means currently pissing somebody off. And generally it's somebody who's growing a monocrop. The concept of noxious weeds started with the idea that of plants that could be toxic to farm animals. Animals know to avoid these plants, but if you fence an animal in and they run out of good food, they will experiment with whatever plants are left. So, as long as your animals have plenty of good food, there's little value in removing noxious weeds. The term noxious weeds was adopted by the government and expanded to include any plant that somebody found annoying, even native plants. Usually, it is plants that do better than the planted monocrop. The theory is that if you claim that plant is threatening your crops, you could make the plant illegal. Then you obliterate it and force your neighbors to obliterate it, and then it won't be a problem anymore, in theory. Some seeds will wait in the soil for 100 years before germinating. Lots and lots of people have added their favorite pet peeve plants to the list. I once read a list of plants that were a mix of noxious weeds and other plants that are legally required to be eliminated. As I read the list, I recognized nearly half of the plants as extremely beneficial permaculture plants.
Yeah.
For example,
This goes
black
into
locust.
the whole weeds thing where, it's the same kind of weed. It's a weed. Well, look at what those weeds do when they come in, why they're so important. Like, are they coming in after a fire? Are they coming in after you rototill? Are they coming in after your land's been compacted down? Those weeds are fucking there for a reason. And they're filling functions that you would otherwise have to do yourself. And you're not going to be able to do it nearly as good as they are if you give it enough time. One thing that really popped into my head there was marijuana. Marijuana's got to be the plant that up until recent years, it's been the plant that was the most noxious according to government. Like, get rid of marijuana, burn it, arrest people that have it. Do everything you can to get rid of this plant. And it also is the plant that had the most rebellion, where people said, fuck you, government, we're doing it. And whether we know we could get arrested, we know that could happen, and we're going to do it anyway.
So, oh wow, what a political minefield to just even start to talk about marijuana. And it has. I mean, on Permies, we have a policy; we don't even allow people to talk about it anymore. And then we've got the cider press now, where people can go and talk about it. Where we kind of say, like, sure, you can talk about it, but maybe talk about it after you've talked about stinging nettle, because a lot of the stuff that is really great in cannabis, marijuana stuff. It's some of those things. It's even better in nettle, and so, like, why not? Do the nettle stuff first, then come back and do the cannabis later. If the nettle isn't good enough for you, because it's not politicized, and
right.
So. But all right.
Well, nettle doesn't get you high, Paul.
Exactly. Which is why there's the major political component to it. And it's kind of like, I just kind of feel like on our site, if people start talking about pot, it just seems like then they won't talk about anything else ever again. It just overwhelms everything. It's invasive.
And there are thousands of forums dedicated to marijuana.
Oh, yeah. Go there. Talk about it there. I want to talk about all the other things. So, all right. Moving along here.
But wait, are there a lot of permaculture sites talking about marijuana, though? Just a thought. I don't know if there are any big forums for permaculture enthusiasts who do marijuana or grow it or whatever. Which I think it's a great plant. I think it is one of the great plants that could be in any permaculture garden.
Yeah. And you know what? And I think 10 years from now, all this bullshit around it'll be given up. And then we can
dominoes are falling.
Yeah, and for those, and then we can start like growing varieties that are particularly good at improving the soil, or are particularly good at for rope, or whatever, for fabric, that kind of stuff. I'd like to see the stuff for improving the soil first, but right now it's like, I just get so tired, when it gets brought up. It's like, oh man, now we're going to talk about this for the next 7 hours. I've got so
all right. On that note, let's jump into the herbicide tie-in.
Herbicide tie-in. Herbicides are generally recognized as the best way to get rid of unwanted plants. So, a lot of native plant organizations receive a lot of love in the form of actual dollars from herbicide companies. Weed boards also get a lot of support from herbicide companies. The laws against weeds are often lobbied for by herbicide companies. Granted, there are exceptions, but as a general rule of thumb, this is the case. Google it. I know that whenever I hear of a native plant organization, my first thought is funded by herbicide companies. or lipstick on an herbicide company. Same for weed boards. Just looking for an excuse to spray some product. The weird thing is that a lot of these organizations are nonprofit organizations. Love the earth by poisoning it. Yeah, nonprofit goes in quotes because it turns out that there are a lot of people profiting nonprofit organizations.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, whenever I hear the phrase nonprofit, I kind of feel like nonprofit was a phrase coined by George Orwell.
When I fear nonprofit, I think can invest, not beholden to shareholders.
Well, they're beholden to a board. They have a board. It's just that it's like, there's. I mean, I think there's two kinds of nonprofits. There's nonprofits, like I always think of Free Cycles in Missoula, which is such an amazing place. And it's like their total gross dollars per month is somewhere in the neighborhood of like $952 per month.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's getting rich there. Nobody. And there's like 25, 30 people that keep that place going every month, every week. Are constantly working. And to me, that's a nonprofit. I mean, they are paying for their electricity. They're paying for the things that they got to pay for. But
they are what nonprofits are supposed to be,
it's
or what you would expect them to be.
Volunteers. And then so many so-called nonprofits, it's like, okay, we're going to go out, we're going to beg for money, and we're going to bring in the money, and then we're going to pay ourselves. And then our function is to teach people something or another, but we don't have enough money to do that. We're barely getting by on the money that we got coming in just to pay ourselves to go beg for money. And it's kind of like it's not that different from somebody with a cardboard sign standing on the road next to the cars asking for spare change. And it's like no, you're taking all this money that's being given to you and pretty much just putting it in your pocket.
I think it's worse than that because at least with someone on the road asking for spare change, when you give them spare change, it's a genuine, I want to help this person. Whereas with nonprofits, oftentimes it's, I'm going to give this person money because I don't want to pay that much in taxes.
Okay. So, moving along here, the never-ending battle. Getting rid of the non-native plants is a huge task. Billions of dollars, trillions. I think it would probably hit close to $1 trillion to remove the non-native plants just from the state of Montana. Yeah,
it'd be something like what was it? The war on drugs, the war on non-natives. Yeah.
And it isn't something that you would want to do just one time. It would be something where it would be a massive task. And then it would take that much again every 10 years to maintain it. It will never end. But as long as the war wages on, herbicide companies will keep making money. All right. Now we come to this thing of like so often for 20,000 acres, there's a 20,000 acre plot and there's one person managing it. And I want to compare that to something where we break that up into 2,000 plots of 10 acres each, and there's a person on each 10 acres. I've heard of
much more micromanaged.
I've heard that the majestic Russian olive tree is no longer allowed to be sold in Montana.
Is that true?
That's what I've heard. That's what
I hope not. What a great tree.
There is concern that it is displacing native plants. My impression is that it's growing in places that are nearly devoid of any plant life, and it basically creates an oasis so other plants, including natives, can get started. I've talked to 3 plant experts who are certain that it's good to put Russian olive on the noxious list. But I never did understand what they said was the downside, other than it is not a native plant. I talked to 6 other plant experts, and they seemed to also be confused. So I don't know. I think I'm considered to be a bit of an expert. not the ultimate expert by any means, but I know of quite a few things, and I've heard the people that are powerfully advocating that the Russian olive should be banned, and I tried to ask them why, and maybe there's a clear answer in their head, but I did not hear anything from me that even sounded like a valid reason. It all seems cyclical. It's bad because it's bad. And the reason why it's bad is because it's bad. Why is it bad? Because of badness. And because of badness, it's bad. Therefore bad. Therefore ban. And it's kind of like, wait, why? And it's like, well, wherever it grows, that's where a native plant can grow, like a cottonwood tree. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, a cottonwood tree would do good in a lot of these places, but in a lot of these places, the cottonwood tree was not growing, and the Russian olive, got going. Now, the other thing is that a Russian olive will grow someplace where it's like fucking desert, and a cottonwood tree will not grow there. Cottonwood trees are thirsty. But, a Russian olive tree, if you give it some water, it'll love that spot. So I do kind of feel like, by all means, and plus if you go to a spot and there's a Russian olive tree and you don't like it, you can fix it with a chainsaw. And that wood's great wood for all kinds of uses. And then if you want a cottonwood tree to grow there instead, then by all means, plant a whole bunch of cottonwood trees. So it's not that tough to do, but if you're doing 20,000 acres and you're going to be of that mentality of like, okay, I'm going to obliterate it all from here, but my neighbors are still growing it, so the seeds are going to come in. All right.
So Russian olive, it was brought in like it wasn't that long ago. It was like early 1900s from Russia or from Asia. And the reason they brought it in was because it was a great windbreak. It stabilized the soils, and it provided habitat where otherwise like birds weren't very interested in being in the area, things like that. And so from my understanding is the reason Russian olives are disliked so much by the States is because they are around stream beds and like riparian zones. And supposedly the roots go so deep, they break up the stream beds and cause more erosion, which I don't know if that's true. I know that they do have deep roots and they sprout from roots, which is why they consider them such a pain in the ass to get rid of. But I don't see how it would be breaking up stream beds. But that is the argument, is that the roots are breaking up the stream beds, and then waters, especially in like California, water is able to erode the stream bed and cause all these problems.
That is a valid argument. I don't know how true it is, but I mean, like, if you could say something like, okay, there's a creek here, and somehow when you plant a Russian olive, then the creek disappears because of the way that the root system works in the Russian olive. And if that's been demonstrated to be true, then it's like, okay, then I would say that it would be wise to not have Russian olives near stream beds, but I wouldn't ban it entirely from the whole state.
I agree. But that is why California especially has such a big problem with Russian olive, or that they want to get rid of it, is because apparently that is what's happening, even though I don't understand it or see how that is true, but maybe it is. But they can't get rid of it because they rip out all the Russian olive around these stream beds, and then more grows because it grows from the roots. They're not extracting all of the roots, and to do that, they would have to really fuck up the stream beds.
I kind of feel like, all right, let's say you want to get rid of it, and then you're on 1 acre, and you're like, oh, I've decided that I hate this plant. I'm a plant bigot, and I hate this fucking plant. It kind of seems like it's not that big a deal. It kind of seems like you've got 1 acre. You're gonna first year chainsaw action. Then you're gonna go in there with the loppers, and then you're gonna go back in there and you're gonna be pulling this stuff. I mean,
and you're gonna be planting something else to take its place, which makes it hard for the Russian olive if you can get it established, the Russian olive's not going to be able to compete.
Yeah. So we're back to this whole thing that I had to say about, put a permie there and discourage the plant that you don't want. All right.
Just like you're saying, even 10 acres, someone can do that with 10 acres. It doesn't have to be 1 acre. I mean, 10 acres.
No, I think 10 is fine. But if you've got 1, and 1 acre is still a pretty big chunk of land. But if you've got 1, then it's pretty clear that you're going to totally take care of this. Now with 10 acres, that's a bigger chunk of land, and a person could make the argument of how many hours a week is it going to take, and stuff like that. And it's annoying. It's a bother. So, all right, back to the 20,000 acres versus 10. This makes me think that there are some people that are powerful advocates of native plants, and they own 20,000 acres, and they have paid some enormous amount of money to cut down the Russian olives because they're not native. And the Russian olive trees come back. So naturally, they want to make sure there are no Russian olive trees growing within 100 miles. So they might possibly be able to reduce their non-native tree cutting budget. After all, if you are one person with 10 acres and you don't like Russian olive trees, you can cut them down pretty quickly. You can use the wood for firewood or to make hugelkultur for other plants. So if a person has 10 acres and they like Russian olive trees, why is it that they're not allowed to buy a Russian olive tree? It's an excellent permaculture tree. The only thing I can think of is that this whole thing about owning 20,000 acres and advocating native plants only. All right, so almost done with the article. Plant bigotry. With all due respect to Godwin's law, I read something suggesting that native versus non-native distinction is a type of bigotry, complete with links to Nazi and Aryan stuff or racism in general. Natives only sounds a bit like whites only. I think folks should have the right to be as bigoted as they like. The thing that gets weird for me is when the government requires bigotry. Myth.
Yeah.
Myth. Native plants are better suited to your area. If this were true, why do we have any concern over non-native plants threatening native plants? All right, bottom line is most native plants are awesome. Most non-native plants are awesome. Some native plants are icky. Some non-native plants are icky. When I hear people advocating native plants because they're native, I wonder if they're employed by herbicide companies, either directly or indirectly, or if they have bought into the spin generated by herbicide companies. Either way, it's a bit of a bummer. I hope that all gardeners and farmers everywhere grow lots of stuff that they think is cool. I hope that one group of farmers, gardeners, does not try to impede the joy of other farmers and gardeners. The apple tree is non-native. Apples are non-native.
Oranges are non-native.
And apples are as American as apple pie.
Yeah. I mean, great article, by the way, Paul. Well written. Yeah, I really thoroughly enjoyed listening or reading it and watching the videos that are in it. So if you guys have a chance, head over to permies.com and watch the videos and read the article.
Well, now, one of the reasons we're bringing this up now is that it was about 1 year ago today that Toby Hemingway died.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things where Toby kind of would get into it a little bit. And so we got a video with him above. But it's it was a very difficult space for him. And
well, I think his ultimate conclusion, from what I understand, was that try to work with native plants where you can, try to implement native plants. And if it's not working out, then look to the next non-native thing that will work for you.
Yeah.
But ultimately try and encourage the native plants. And I don't know where he stood on what is native, what's considered native and what's not exactly. But ultimately it was try and do it with native if you can. Otherwise, go ahead and do non-native if you can't do it with native. And I don't think that's I think that's fine.
Right now, I'm going to go. I'm going to go farther than Toby. I think the thing to do is to do your permaculture design based on the foods that you're going to eat, and then you're going to plant the species that are going to support those. And sometimes it's going to be native, and sometimes it's going to be non-native. And I think one of the big things that I mentioned above is that it's like if you do a permaculture system on your plot, and if you've got a big enough plot that you're feeding yourself 100%, then you probably can do that with a half an acre. You could feed yourself 100%, or you're going to, 2 more acres is going to have to be obliterated, which may have had a lot of native plants on it in order to feed you. And so it's like, I think that by growing a permaculture system based on the foods that you enjoy and eat is going to do more for native plants than if you planted native plants.
Yeah, I mean, building stronger habitat is what's going to ultimately help build better habitat around you. So if your habitat is very strong, it's going to spread or has a better chance of spreading beyond yours with edge effect. And ultimately, that will also be helping the native plants as well as non-natives. Either way. Yeah, I'm with you on I'd say if you have a native, like if you're into native plants, go for it. Do what Toby suggests. Try it. And if it doesn't work, or then use something else. My thing is the same as yours. Go with what's best, whether it's native or not native. And I think the same way with the whole Americans not wanting Mexicans in America because they're taking jobs. Well, to me, it's the same thing with the plants. It's like just hire what works best.
I'm kind of curious what exactly would happen if we, went the opposite direction. I mean, of course, the Cheeto wants to build a wall. And so, right now, if you want to drive to Mexico, then there's like this, you get to if you're on the freeway or whatever, you get to this point where it's like, okay, we want to make sure that we really limit who crosses the border. I kind of wonder what would happen if we eliminated that. We just
eliminated borders altogether?
I mean, you could have an imaginary line, and you could have a sign there that says "Now entering Mexico."
Kind of like was in Canada, or used to be in Canada.
Yeah. Or like right now, when I go from Montana to Idaho, there's a sign that says "Now entering Idaho."
I mean, my thoughts are on it. If you eliminate the war on drugs, there's really no reason for them anymore.
Yeah, I guess my point is like, okay, like let's say we just took that out. We just, all those people, we just, they all lose their jobs. I guess, so, but we just.
You mean like the Border Patrol? They lose their jobs?
Yeah. The Border Patrol. There's no more border. There's no more physical border. Right. There's no more military people, walking the border to keep people out or whatever. And instead, it's like you don't even slow down when you come to the border. Instead, you just pass a sign that says "Now entering Mexico."
Like going into a different state.
Yeah. Now, of course, this is something where it's like I have no business even talking about this. I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. But I'm just a little bit of a mental exercise, a little curious. So what happens? What happens? And so it's wide open. Now, people from Mexico can come and go all they want. People from the United States can come and go all they want. People from all the countries all over the world can kind of come and go all they want. And so it's like, what happens? I mean, I don't know. We are trying to keep out bad guys, but I kind of feel like our system doesn't really keep out the bad guys. And so it's like if they really want in, they can get in anyway, right? So
yeah. I think a lot of things would have to simultaneously happen in society for everybody to be cool with it.
Anyway, I mean, there's this whole concept. They're taking our jobs, and I kind of feel like, you know what? I've tried to hire people for a bunch of stuff, and it's like, in fact, I have experience with some people that were residents here for a short time. and it's like the highest paying job that they've probably ever had in their lives paid $12 an hour. And here they are in rural Montana. I don't know where they were before, but they were in a big city before. And it's like, okay, I will give you $200 to do this task, which a pro would get done in less than a day. And so you take all the time you want. It's $200 for the task. And they would be pissed off. I mean, first of all, they'd say, okay, I'll do it, because they think that they're a pro, and then they find out that they're not. And then in the end, it turns out that there's a few different very important elements. One, they refuse to work for anything less than $25 an hour. And it's kind of like, well, what's the most you've ever been paid in your life? And it's, like $12 an hour. And it's kind of like, well, you want me to pay you more than double of what you've ever been paid to do something for which you've got no clue how to do it, and it'll be a learning experience for you. And then on top of that, a pro would get it done in less than a day, and you've already taken 2 weeks on it, and it still isn't done. And so it's kind of like, I'm so confused. And plus, you said you would do it for $200, and now you're coming back to me demanding triple pay to get paid more than what a professional would charge to do it. And so it's kind of like, so there's a lot of, so then I kind of think like, okay, then if a bunch of Mexicans come in and, they take these jobs, then I don't know. I'm having a hard time working up a tier here.
I think it's bullshit. I think jobs that Mexicans get are oftentimes jobs that people don't want.
Yeah. I worked as a software engineer for many years, and that's why I got paid buku bucks. I suppose it's possible that a bunch of Mexican people could come in, and then I can't get a job because there's Mexican software engineers, and they're cheaper, and I think that's the argument, is that they're going to be cheaper. That's how they're going to take your job. And I imagine that the people that are saying, jobs, I imagine that those people from South Park are going to be basically thinking like, okay, I'm getting paid $25 an hour, and if a Mexican came, they would want only $10 an hour. So I'm getting paid more than the going rate, and I'm fucking the system, and I like that.
Yeah.
So, don't come and screw my deal.
And it's probably going to happen, as a society flourishes, even like the Mexican community flourishes, gets better educated. Yeah, that's going to happen. And what else is going to happen? Automation shit's going to be taking over jobs like crazy, and it already is. And so, what are you going to now? Everybody's going to be anti-technology. I don't know. I know one way to get around all of it is to do permaculture in your own fucking backyard. Start minimizing your outside needs and start focusing on building your own ecology, building your own sustainable way of living, and you start worrying a lot less about those outside problems.
So, all right. I don't know anything about the value of building a wall or going in the opposite direction. I'm totally ignorant. I'm sure I'm wrong about everything in that space. That's not my area of expertise. But we're kind of talking about like, I mean, another thing is that all the foods that we're eating here, and it was kind of mentioned earlier, they're non-native, everything. And I remember hearing this native guy talk once, and he was saying something about how, when white people showed up with potatoes, we just went fucking nuts over the potatoes. I mean, who wants to eat camas anymore? I mean, everything that we were harvesting that was, anything close to being a tuber was just so tiny, and it required so much prep time. I mean, hell, potatoes, they're huge, and they take hardly any prep time at all. There's so much food there. Why would you ever want to fuck with anything else? So, I think a lot of our foods are going to be non-native. I mean, corn is not native to the Pacific Northwest, but it is native to North America. Although it's kind of it's a grain that's kind of twisted and fucked up And corn cannot survive without human beings. It's kind of an interesting thing about corn.
That's another thing that other societies bring in is great foods. Chinese food, Mexican food. I mean, can you imagine living without any of those influences in our lives? Sure, you wouldn't know any better, but man, it's pretty good. Now there are bad things about society things that are different from plant things. Like bringing in a non-native plant isn't all of a sudden changing the way other plants think and do things. So there are differences that way. But they could be changing the existence or the need for other things. Anyway, man, we are over time.
All right. So, hey, I thought that was pretty smackdowny, wasn't it? I mean, I always kind of thought that the function of this program is going to be to cover the topics that are difficult topics, the topics where it would a level 1 person is going to think that's fucking nuts. That's just crazy. And so I feel like the thing to do is let's talk about level 5, level 6 stuff, which is going to seem crazy to your level 1 and your level 2 people. And that's what I always thought this show was about. When you proposed it to me, I thought that's what we're gonna jump into.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately it's that and finding where the disagreements are, and that, and which is usually upper level stuff, is finding where the disagreements are in permaculture and hashing it out. But we agree on so much that that can be difficult sometimes, which is why I try to do the devil's advocate thing. It was very difficult to do for this article because I agree with most of everything that was in it.
At the same time, though, I mean, you've heard people talking about native plant stuff. Yeah. And I mean, I think that when we all are at level 1 or level 2, then the whole thing about native plants sounds fucking awesome. Right. And so we go along with it. But it's not until you get up to level 6 that you start going no, I think that there's I smell a rat. You know?
I feel level 1 through 4 people, they hear about native plants and how enthusiastic, especially some authors are about native plants in books that they've read, and it snaps in their head oh, nothing but native. It's got to be nothing but native. Native is the best. And once you really start digging deeper into it, and that can be hard to change people's perspective, especially if they've been preaching it and saying or especially if they built a business around it, is this is it's got to be native. It's all, or vice versa. It's got to be all non-native. And then all of a sudden you start digging deeper into it, and there are exceptions. There are reasons why you would want to go with both or whatnot. That can be very difficult to change people's minds. But some people get it right away. They're like, oh, okay, I was wrong. Or I read something that I need to reread it because when I first read it, what snapped in my head, being with the understanding I had, was no non-natives. And so yeah, this is it's a great topic for Smackdown.
And I think basically it's lipstick on an herbicide company are these native plant organizations. And I kind of feel like so many people sign up for the native plant organizations thinking it's all about nature, and next thing you know, they've been handed a big thing of a sprayer full of herbicide and told go out and spray. It's for the love of nature, and it's shit. So I kind of feel like that's a big part of what. So we gotta. What we want to do is to jump in on those topics. So you suggested for this show today, what do you do in the wintertime that's permaculture? To me, that just seems like weak shit. Whereas what we just talked about seems to me to be the industrial strength stuff. And granted, you and I aren't arguing about it.
Right.
But we are talking about something that's going to make a lot of people really, really upset because they're at level 1 or level 2. And I feel like, with all those people that hate me, like the Fauci video and whatnot, that so much of it falls, it's like they're totally level 1 or level 2. So this stuff is going to make them angry. And it's kind of like, well, maybe when they mature a bit, you know, like they get to be level 4, suddenly the level 6 stuff seems pretty cool. And then it's like, oh, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have hated on those guys 5 years ago.
I don't think that happens. I don't think that people come to the, or it's a long time before they get the, oh, I was wrong. Like I shouldn't have, like treated someone like shit about something. But I think what happens when you hear things that are controversial to your beliefs, which I strongly encourage people to always research things on the other opposite end of what you believe or what you think is right, to get all perspectives. But if you do that, once you get more knowledge about the situation, you slowly come to the realization or slowly start to think, okay, now I understand, or now I get that perspective. So it's important to talk to people about these things too, because maybe they'll hate you now for what you're saying, but if you get that in their head, other things in their lives happen that bring them full back to the things that you had brought up to them. And you might get some people coming back to you going, hey, you remember last year when we were talking about this? I want to talk more about it. And that's when people start having a change of heart, change of mind.
Which is what Thanksgiving is for.
Yeah, remember last Thanksgiving when we punched each other in the face? And yeah. Yeah, all right. Happy holidays, guys. The next show is day after Christmas. So you wanted to do that show? You want to do one right after Christmas? All right, cool.
I'm working every day, no matter what.
Yep, same here. All right. We'll see everybody day after Christmas. Thanks again for a great audience, great show.
Bye.
Hey, are we going to do the stay after thingy? You want to stay after for a little bit?
Yeah, we can do the stay after thingy.
Let's see. I'm going to stop recording. We're not broadcasting, so I don't have to worry about that. Tuesday says she's getting food.
I want food. I'm hungry.
Man, how do I stop recording? Oh, are you host? Is that why? I can't. Can you stop recording? Hit the stop recording button. Top left.
There's a thing that says recording.
It doesn't show
stop
like this.
video. There we go. Where did it put it?
Oh, you stopped your video. You can start your video again. Stop recording as well.
It says recording.
All right, don't worry about it, man. I'll just cut it out. All right, guys. Hey, if any of you have some, hit start video, Paul. We can't see your beautiful face. There you are.
Okay, but it still says it's recording.
Yeah. If you put your mouse over recording, you might be able to hit stop recording. I think I made you the host is the problem that we're having right now. Let me see. Doesn't matter. Unless you're worried about things being said that
I'm worried about recording things. All right. And plus, we're way past. We gave a lot of extra fuel, so I think we're all good. I don't know where it says it's recording. I don't know where it's recording it to.
It's recording to my server, my cloud.
Okay. All right.
It's not. We're not broadcasting on Facebook or anything. Let's see. Hey guys, we want more controversial topics. So starting next January, I'd really like to start bringing in other people that have differing opinions. In fact, I might want to get some herbicidal people or something. And I want to get some people that we can just hammer on. No.
If you're going to do herbicide people, it's you and them, and I'm not in it. I'm just I'm sick to death of even having the conversation.
All right, we won't do that.
I'm totally serious. I really want to try and keep the conversation like level 3 or higher. You know, it's like I'm just tired of justifying organic. I'm tired of justifying, not using GMOs. I'm just nope. I'm all done with those conversations.
Let me put it a different way. I want to bring in farmers. I want to bring in other farmers, other people doing permaculture. I want us to just start bringing other minds into the conversation. Ben Falk would be a great one that I thought would be a great guest. Just start bringing in some guests and finding things that we could talk about that we might disagree on. but that would be the high level stuff. I think when you start bringing in those kind of people, you're getting into the high level stuff of finding and hashing out different thinking, different beliefs. Or they might be things that we agree on, but are very much beyond introduction level gardening kind of stuff.
I like the idea of talking to Ben. I mean, there's a lot of really amazing and awesome people out there that we can visit with.
So, I mean,
the thing is, you got to make sure to do the legwork first. You got to make sure that, like if they've got a book, you have to have actually read the book.
Yep. Yeah, so we do a show called PTV Presentations, which we're about to start a third season on. A lot of great people on there. However, what they're doing is just presenting something. And so I think this would be a great format to just have a conversation with those folks is kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah.
All right. Okie dokie.
So if you think you're one of those people, send me an email. Or if there's a specific topic you want us to cover, send us an email. Or leave a message on YouTube or whatever. By the way, we got a lot of YouTube videos, man, that have comments. And one day we got to hash through them.
You told me to go look at them. I tried to pick the videos that had the most traffic, and I looked in at probably like 8 of the Smackdowns on YouTube, and I didn't really see anything to comment on. But if you...
Okay.
I know my YouTube is set up so that anytime anybody comments on one of my videos, I get an email. Mm-hmm. And so then if you get an email and you think I should respond, go ahead and forward it to me. All
right. Yeah, I guess I got to do that because I don't get emails. I just get the little thing that pops into the corner. Comment on your video.
Now, Arturo is suggesting HVAC engineers, and then we could talk about rocket mass heaters. And, and it's kind of like, okay, there's another area where it's like, I'm so sick of talking to these people where it's like, okay, yeah, let's have an hour of saying of talking with a person who absolutely refuses to allow that we're heating with 1/10 the wood.
Yeah, basically you're getting into debate territory there, and debates can be very difficult if you're not debating with people that can concede, that can say, okay, yes, you're right, I get it, on either side, which I feel like I am one of those people. Like if you bring an argument to me, I will say, and I have no way to fight it. I'll either say, I need to research that more because I got nothing, or you know what, you're right, I didn't even think of that. That's the kind of personality I have when going into a conversation.
Yeah, and so if it's somebody who's they're getting paid to do it the conventional way, then they oftentimes don't want to. So it's kind of like that's not helping anything. I mean, unless you want to just see some guy just be in denial and lose his shit, it's
which is sometimes what people want to see entertainment wise. That's why a lot of people like watching debates.
I don't want to be in on it. I don't mind. It's it's an HVAC engineer, and then they built a rocket mass heater, and then they've got one winner, and they're like, holy shit, this is everything that they said. That's cool. I don't even mind the idea of let's get Ernie on here combined. There's this one guy that's on YouTube where he built a rocket mass heater, and then he's got a YouTube series. It's all about how rocket mass heaters are shit. And you should listen to Ernie talk about what a dumb fuck that guy is. It's he did not build a rocket mass heater. He built a shitstorm is what he built. And it's read a fucking book, dipshit. It's they're not that hard. And it's I'm building a rocket mass heater. And here's my garden hose that goes in the rocket mass heater. And it's rocket mass heaters aren't built with garden hoses. What are you doing, dumb fuck? And so, yeah, there's stupid shit.
Have you ever seen IQ Squared?
No.
Okay. So IQ Squared has I am interested in doing a debate format show. It's not Permaculture Smackdown, but I am interested in doing a debate formatted show, very much run similar to the way IQ Squared does it. I think their platform, the way they do their debates is very good. I enjoy their debates. And Paul, you should check out one or two. Usually I find that the debates because they have people voting on them from the audience, and they're doing them in like cities. So it's like, okay, well, you know who's going to win this vote, that kind of thing. But the way they do the votes is, all right, so they're debating an idea, and they have two professionals on either side on teams that are, you know, debating back and forth. And they get a certain amount of allotted times that they can speak and things like that. But the way they do it is the audience votes before the debate begins on how they think the idea is. And then what they, you know, whether they agree or disagree with whatever the debate's on. And then after the debate, they vote again, and whoever gets the biggest sway wins. And I like that format. It doesn't work, I don't think, when you're in specific areas talking about broad topics that involve people that aren't specific. Like if you're in a city talking about farming, you're not going to get the right audience voting on farming stuff. Hello, Jocelyn.
Josiah says, hello, Jocelyn. Oh,
Are you done?
it's time. Yeah, we're done. I got to go.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.